Maiden speech, Lee Barron.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Deputy Chair. And can I just start off by saying that it's great to follow the member for Worsley and Eccles, and just congratulate everybody who's done their kind of maiden speeches today, because this is the first time that I've done it, which I suppose is why they're called a maiden speech. I'm proud to speak here for the first time, especially in this debate as well, where facilities in Corby were used by athletes to train for the Olympics. Kieran Riley, who lives in Corby, won silver at the BMX Freestyle, and Adrenaline Alley was the venue that he used within the constituency, a terrific venue that many use. I'm delighted to be here as the Member of Parliament for the constituency of Corby and East Northampton. I'll start off by paying respect to my predecessor, Tom Perscliffe, who had the honour to represent Corby and East Northampton for 9 years. He became a minister during that time, and I know for a fact that he was very proud to serve his constituency. I always found him extremely constructive, extremely cordial, and I know that now, after Parliament, is looking at doing work with disabled people and looking at getting disabled people better access to work, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to work with him, because I'm now chairing an all-party parliamentary group on modernising employment, and one of the areas we're going to look at is how disabled people can access work. So I hope our paths will cross again. I also want to say to another predecessor of mine, Andy Sawford, the last Labour Member of Parliament for Corby and East Northampton. He continues to be a good friend to our constituency, somebody that I seek wise counsel from. And I'm fortunate enough to say that I get that rather cheaply, because he runs a political consultancy. So if you ever ask him his opinion, it's going to cost you a lot of money. But whenever I do, I get it for free. So thanks, Andy, for being there for us as we move on. Corby and East Northamptonshire is a large constituency which I've had many, many years dealing with. I represented Corby's postal workers for over a decade, and I can tell you now, a finer group of workers you'll never be able to meet. My daughter Hannah was married at the wonderful venue at the Stanick Hotel, and my father was, for a time, a boot and shoe worker in the town of Raunds. Indeed, Raunds has its place in history for fighting for fair wages and good pay. Next year marks the 120th anniversary of the Raunds strike of 1905, which saw workers who made boots for the army march to Parliament to demand better pay. The War Office agreed and set a minimum rate for their job. The case for fair wages and good pay is as relevant today as it was then. Work should be the route out of poverty, not a lifetime trapped in it. Yet 40% of children living in Corby and East Northampton who live in poverty have at least one parent who are working. We need to reshape the world of work so that it pays and our economy is better shaped, so it is always better to have the dignity of a job than not a job at all. Yeah. And in-work poverty should be eradicated and chucked into the dustbin of history. Today we celebrate the New Deal for working people being laid before this House. Yeah. That, I believe, will have the foundations to ensure that there is a better future for working people, and I want to be around to make sure that we can do that. Other parts that make up my constituency include the market town of Thrapston, which boasts its own livestock market, and I recently was delighted to join Thrapston's Mayor Andy McGovern at his recent service to celebrate his term of office. East Northamptonshire is also home to the town of Oundle, where I work with Oundle School and Prince William School, 2 out of 3 of an open partnership of education. Independent and state schools coming together to share their facilities and their best practices, and I'm delighted to be able to support that and to facilitate it. Corby is a town that is built on steel. Back in the day, many travelled down from Scotland as steel workers, and the steel works were built, and residents are rightly proud of their heritage, which they celebrate each year with a weekend of Highland Games and many Burns suppers. It has a proud history and a spirit which has seen them rise against any adversity that they've faced. That's why after fighting against the steelworks closure in the 1980s, which saw over 10,000 people thrown on the dole, they rebuilt their town, they rebuilt their communities, and they wouldn't be beaten. That spirit was captured during my time on the campaign trail. I knocked at the door of a lady. She came to the door and she said, and I said, I'm standing to be your Member of Parliament at the next election. She said, that's amazing. She said, my mum would really love to meet you. Could you come back in half an hour? Because we've got guests at the minute. I said yes, so I went back. It turned out her mum had just stopped taking treatment for stage 4 cancer and wanted to live her days. And she said to me, she said, I want you to do 2 things. First of all, she said, always speak up for Corby. We're good people, she said, we're proud people. She said, and the second thing I want you to do is get the number 50 bus back. I said, OK. What's the number 50 bus? Well, the number 50 bus was the direct bus that went from Corby to Kettering General Hospital. And she said, when my husband was in hospital, she said, that was my lifeline to get to see him. She goes, and I want it back. Anyway, I'm going to pop round to see her daughter, because on the 2nd of November, the number 50 bus is back. It'll take people directly from Corby to Kettering General. The only thing that they can't do is give us the number 50 back. It's now called the number 2, because the number 50 goes to Peterborough, and apparently it'd cost money to get the number back. But I think the principle has now been established. I've spent my adult life representing working people. From the start, when I took on an apprenticeship in the Royal Mail, and I joined my union, the Communication Workers Union. A lot of people talk about their schooling, their university, their training. Well, the CWU was my schooling, was my university, was my training, and without a shadow of a doubt, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. And the journey here has been somewhat interesting, to say the least. It started in the back of a taxi with me and Francis O'Grady talking about the importance of working class people entering our politics, because we was on our way to the funeral of Jack Dromey, a dear friend to this place, to this party, and to our movement. And I want to place on record my thanks to the TUC for what they did for me in supporting me during my time as the candidate. So it went from the back of a taxi with Francis to driving around Corby in a Vauxhall with Eamon Norton and Mark Pengelly, trying to knock on the doors of about 600 Labour Party members to convince them that I was the candidate they should all vote for. I mean, anyway, we did the best we could. I became the candidate, and now I represent that constituency. I know it's not going to be easy to do that. I'm determined to make a difference. There are issues that I want to get involved with and want to see changes to. A difference that I want to see in the world of work by making sure that work really does pay and is a route out of poverty. I want to make a difference to give a voice for so many families with children with special educational needs who are being denied the basic right to education. And every child has the right to education, and special educational means should not mean that you're denied that fundamental right. And I also want to talk as well about dignity in dying, which we're going to discuss. But there's another aspect to it. It's illegal in this country to sack a worker when they've got a terminal diagnosis on the grounds of capability. That is fundamentally wrong. We need to close that loophole, and we need to make sure that the last thing people worry about when they've got a diagnosis like that is the future of their job. We shouldn't be treating people like that, and we need to make the changes accordingly. The last thing I'd like to do is to thank my family for their support. I'm a proud father, grandfather, son and brother to a family that's always been strong in values, principles, and I thank them all. My mum couldn't be part of this journey here with me because she died several years ago. But I want to say her name, Patricia Eileen Lillian Barron, because now I've said her name, they'll write it down, it'll be in Hansard, no one can erase it, and a bit of her's going to live forever. And I'm proud to be able to do that. We've much to do to make the change we need to give people back a future they can once again look forward to. And I, for one, will do all I can to make it happen. Our unity is our strength. our solidarity, that is how we'll get there, and I intend to make the most of the time I have in this place.
Yeah.